Hello again, everyone. I'm Fiona Napier. I'm Edmund Bell's International Sales Director. And unlike what I said previously, this isn't Ashley Aitchison, this is Ashley Addy, our Fabric Technologist. I did know that. So today we're going to take you through a bit of, we've called it technical selling for contract fabrics. And really, I think it's a chat with Ashley to explain some complex matters regarding contract fabrics that will help you doing the technical selling, I guess. And today we're firstly going to introduce Ashley in a bit more detail to explain why he's an expert for you. We're definitely going to talk about sustainability because we know that's close to everyone's hearts at the moment. We're going to talk about Ecotex or Ecotex. We're going to talk about our flame retardant or FR standards for our fabrics. We're going to also explain, the difference in function on upholstery standards. We'll talk about acoustic absorbency because that's been a theme that's been really hot over the last couple of years even. And of course, very much topical at the moment, anti-microbial treatments. What I would say is, I bet you'll have some questions for Ashley. As this is a live session, probably what we'll do is ask you to fill in the Q&A, in the chat, whatever your questions are. We'll come back to them at the end and answer whatever we can. If we don't get to them in the session, we'll email you back with some answers anyway. So fire the matters, whether or not they relate specifically to the topics we're talking about. Maybe you want to ask about manufacturing process, whatever, give us your questions. So first things first, Ashley, who are you?
Well, that's a very good question. Yes, I am. Yeah, that's the right one. Been in the textile industry now 17 years, which seems crazy, but yeah, time has flown. Came into the industry completely by accident. I got a call from my father actually, just before I was queuing up for my last A-level exam at 18 years old, and he asked me if I wanted to come and work at a flooring factory in the laboratory. Didn't have a clue what happened in the textile industry or in the flooring industry at all. Gave it a go. 17 years later, here I am. Absolutely loved it.
It hooks into you somehow anyway.
Yeah, I just fell in love with textiles and the whole business and things like that. Worked in the laboratory working on innovation, product development, sustainability even then, looking at that.
Yeah.
A lot of the early years was in the laboratory in a white coat doing lots of trials with recycled materials and things like that. Left the flooring industry then after about 8 years. Went into the textile industry for fabrics. Were there for a few years. Went back into the flooring and then came back here to Edmund Bell, back into the fabrics.
So, and when you first started into textiles, was that predominantly, laboratory work, testing, or what kind of things?
It was, yeah. So in the first years I was in the laboratory working on new materials, new raw materials, looking at recycled materials to use in compounds and things like that.
It's quite fashion forward at the time.
Yeah, very much so. I was at a very forward-thinking, innovative and sustainable company at the time. I was there for 8 years, learned a lot of things there about sustainability, so they really were a driving force in the
super important nowadays, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah. They had their own vision for it then. Then sort of stepped up and started doing a lot of trial work in using the production facilities and things like that, making sure that the trials were working. Giving me a really good grounding of fabrics and raw materials that are used in coatings and compounds in the industry. I then started working in the laboratory at a fabric company, and then from there I started working my way up into managing quality and technical departments and roles and things like that.
And then I suppose, could you maybe describe for people what exactly your role is mostly consisted of at Edmund Bell?
Yeah, so a lot of technical and quality queries will come my way. I'll be
managing the claims processes.
Yeah, claims processes and looking at claims and managing what trends we're seeing in the claims and what we can do in terms of corrective action and making sure that we're stopping these any issues that we have, stopping them at source.
So that's a really big point, right? If you haven't already seen some of our previous sessions, one of the really important things about Edmund Bell is essentially the distribution arm of the rest of the group, or certainly parts of the group. So we go on and on about PWGF, our finishing plant, which is just down the road from us. And as Ashley says, claims processes, wonderful to have control of that internally, but it's really the fact that we can go back to source and we can do something about that at the mill that is so special.
Yeah, having that close relationship with them helps us no end, that we can look at really stopping those issues happening at source.
And apart from anything, also PWG has it has all sorts of testing. It has a true laboratory, doesn't it, for indicative testing.
Yeah.
It's got what we call the dungeon
Yeah.
for light testing.
Checking the blackout.
Yeah. So yeah, a whole rake of facilities that we wouldn't otherwise have.
Absolutely, yeah. And not only doing that here at Edmund Bell, also looking at sort of technical issues that we have and looking forward and how we can move the business forward in terms of sustainability, Ecotex, which we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, so not only problems, but positive things.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Everything's not problems. We're also looking at solutions and ways of moving forward. As everywhere does move forward, if we stand still, we're going backwards because everybody else is moving forwards, and we've just got to keep on top of that.
Yeah. I think one trend in contract fabrics that we've seen over the last few years is the technical specifications for fabrics getting fuller and fuller and fuller. When in the past someone would buy a flame retardant dim out because it was flame retardant and it was dim out. Now they want it to be a certain width, a certain certification. They want it to have Ecotex. They want it to be acoustically absorbent. They're interested in so many different additional things, and we have to keep finding the next one that's relevant as well, making sure we're on top of it. So there's Ashley, that's what he's doing all day. And of course you represent at Edmund Bell an awful lot of expertise, additional expertise within the group in textile manufacture as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So shall we talk about sustainability first and foremost?
Yes, definitely.
So how would you, obviously you hear a lot about sustainability in the frame of recycled or recyclable product, but it's broader than that, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yeah. It's not just about recycled content, which a lot of people do feel that is, sustainability in our industry. It's a lot more than that. It's the whole ethos of the business, right from the top all the way through. So every single colleague, we can all do our bit in terms of sustainability. Even
down to paperlessness in the office, as much as possible.
Things like that, yeah. The way textile manufacture is or has been in the last few years, it's not sustainable as it is. There's a lot of waste because we're using a lot of nasty raw materials that have got a lot of petroleum in and things like that, and it's ways of using that and making sure that we do have no waste in the industry and closing that loop, and creating that biodiversity that we've got and recreating nature where waste is food and there is no waste. And that's what we've kind of got to bring into our industry, really.
So in terms of, well, I think can we stick maybe with internally what we've done in offices and in recycling internally? If you've got anything that you can maybe add about that?
Yeah, so here at Edmund Bell we are quite early on our sustainability journey on where we want to be, but we have made great inroads in the last few months. We've started recycling a lot of our waste fabric. We've closed the loop entirely on our waste fabric. What we're doing is we're recycling that into a new material that we can use in the flooring industry. So we've closed that loop. There's no waste there from a lot of our
It's a big change from before.
It's a huge change. Even in the last 3 months, we've just from here at Edmund Bell, from our waste, from our selvage, we've diverted 1/4 ton of waste fabric which was going to landfill. That's now being used in another product, and we've closed that loop and there's no waste there now.
Really good.
So that's a really good start for us. We're also, we use a lot of sensored lighting. So we're not wasting energy from lights being on all the time. If someone's not in an area, the lights go off, so we're saving our energy. So we've reduced our energy consumption there as well. To
be clear, Ashley's actually written in recent months a full new sustainability policy for us. So it does include everything from the way we deal with heating and lighting in offices through to product. We're not trying to just give you a quick bit of marketing spiel. Although Adam and Amy would be excellent at doing that if we wanted, but that's not what we're about. We're trying to give you long-term, really useful processes that actually mean something in the end.
That's it, and like Fiona said, sustainability is everywhere. Every product you buy, every advert you see on TV now, it's all about sustainability and recycled content and this, that, and the other. And we've just, we do it because we want to, not because we feel we have to, because of that pressure. Not pressure as such, but it's out there a lot, and it's because we want to do it. We want to make a difference, and it's the right thing to do. We've
been saying in a couple of other sessions, especially when we've been talking about design, that it's so nice actually that specifiers are pushing through this agenda at the moment. They're right at the start of a project. They're saying, well, we want it to be sustainable. We want want to see different varieties of sustainability within the final product. Whether it is, you know, trends like green walls and things like that, whether it is the use of certain materials, it's exciting to see that.
Exactly, yeah. And if people want more information on any of our fabrics, we can always provide that, can't we? So.
Yeah. So in terms of one kind of controversy that I think I want to touch on is how exactly do you know, what's the most sustainable kind of fabric? Obviously, recycled is excellent,
yeah.
But there's this question mark over natural fibre and artificial, like polyester, because obviously an awful lot of our fabrics are polyester.
Yeah.
What's the reason for the fact that they're polyester, actually? I mean, why do we go for that?
Well, we go for polyester because it's a recyclable material.
Yeah.
We can recycle that. A lot of our all our polyester fabrics, we are recycling those now because we can do that. It's a single fibre that we can use, and we can reuse that again and again and again. And the good thing about polyester is it can be from recycled polyester.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So that's something we're kind of working into product development thoughts.
That's it. It's a whole,
yeah.
You know, it's our design team, it's everybody where we're looking at using those sources
yeah.
that then can be from recycled material, and then at the end of their life can be recycled.
Well, that's it.
So
I think there's often this consideration that natural is always better, and I think, you know, probably if you're not using recycled, that you should be moving towards recycled and polyester.
Yeah.
But natural fibres, there's several reasons we don't use them for contract materials. It's because polyester, most of our polyesters inherent means you don't add extra chemicals. If you buy a cotton or a linen, if you want it to be flame retardant, you've got to spray a load of chemical on it.
That's it.
Right, not very sustainable, and also not durable in the same way that the inherent polyester is. Yeah. Also, there's, you know, so we do have natural fibres in our collection, and we point it out when they're natural fibres because I'm sure that is of interest to you guys. But as Ashley said, much more recyclable is the polyester yarn, and also there is that little question mark over water usage, for example, considerably less in polyester than in natural fibre production. Yeah, in natural fibre production it is quite intensive, and there's quite a lot of processes in there, whereas polyester is quite a slick linear process that's quite quick. So I think that's what we're trying to drive home, isn't it? Is that the whole approach to sustainability and product use should be quite nuanced. Understand that there's many different factors that feed into the decisions made in supply chain for sustainability. Absolutely. Yeah. One other thing I think we want to touch on for sustainability is probably about coating, right? And the fact that we're not bringing everything in coated from the Far East, as many suppliers of blackouts do. We're doing it here. And the difference in weight. Don't know if you want to touch on that, Ashley? Yeah, obviously a coated product is a lot heavier than a base cloth that is to be coated, and we're locally producing that. So we're saving on all that carriage of all that extra tonnage of weight. And it's a lot of meters. It's a lot. Hundreds of thousands of meters. And we're saving on that by finishing these goods locally. To give you an idea, Zanzibar, our best-selling decorative blackout plain, I think the base cloth's about 70 grams. 70 grams, yeah. Finished weight 240 grams. Yeah. So orders of magnitude kind of thing, you know. Exactly. So really big saving in terms of carbon footprint. Yeah. We haven't done the math yet because it's a horrible sum. It is, but it's something that we can look at. And, you know, I think that's what we're wanting to get better on in future years as we're starting this journey, that we can get things out there that tell you the facts and figures of what we're doing and what we're saving and the journey that we're on, really. A final point, and I know this is one that you want to really clarify and give a policy on, but we do have almost in place a policy to allow for curtains made of our fabrics to be returned for recycling, as Ashley said, into carpet underlay, right? Another useful product. Essentially, that's already an open possibility. We're just kind of putting in place the logistics of it, how you get the goods back to us, the fact that transport needs to be sustainable as well. So that's something we're going to have as an option relatively soon. Yeah, just how we can help you recycle your products once you finish with them. Yeah, that's it. And offer, you know, you can offer your end customer, hotel, care home, wherever it is, the option to be sustainable themselves. Yeah, absolutely. So Ecotex, we said on the schedule at the start we were going to touch on, or Ecotex in fact. Can you explain to us what it is? I know there's different standards of Ecotex as well, isn't there? There is, yeah. So Ecotex is a standard that is approved by an independent organisation of test houses and testing. It basically certifies your products to be not harmful to the environment and made
during sustainable processes. We're looking at doing a lot of our products and getting those Ecotex certified. We've made a lot of inroads in that in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago we had 4 products that were Ecotex certified. Currently we have 54 products that are certified.
So that's a really quick improvement.
Yeah, and a lot of our new product development that we're working on, they are Ecotex certified. So as soon as we launch in new products, we're then getting them added to our certificate as well.
So when we first started, I think that the first ones were probably the dim outs, weren't they?
There were 4 dim outs that were on there. Now we've got dim outs, linings, upholstery, shears. We've got a wide range of things. The one area that we haven't got at the minute, but we are working on, is the blackouts.
Yeah.
Due to the coating, but we're looking at that and we're trying to innovate that and get those certified as well.
So Ecotex obviously is very well known in Europe, and it's used on all sorts of different kinds of products, isn't it? You see it on apparel as well.
You do, yeah. You see
all
a lot
sorts
of things.
of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think when it's 100, is it potentially 100 different chemicals it's tested for? Is
Yes.
that right? Okay. Right. So there's a specific list of a roster of chemicals that they're making, they're auditing for essentially in supply chain.
So we're certified to Ecotex 100.
One thing I would ask is, obviously there are many such standards in the world, some more beloved with designers and specifiers, and some, are more, I guess, consumer goods and things like that.
Yeah.
And definitely different places. So in the States, there might be a taste for different standards to here in Europe. We'd be always interested to hear from you. What's the next certification that's of interest to you, or which specialism or focus is of interest to you in these kinds of certifications, because we want to be working towards them.
Exactly, yeah. We want to keep our finger on the pulse so we know exactly what's out there, what's coming up, what's new, what's fresh, and so that our products can be suitable for your needs and what you need them in.
I'm even thinking, how there's always trends and ups and downs of different chemicals that are in focus. So, we had decabromides once upon a time, and then we had phthalates, which of course we've got phthalate free on an awful lot.
We have, so they're always adding chemicals to these lists, and we've got to keep up to date and up to speed. And if we are using any chemicals that do get added, we need to look at that and modify those compounds and processes so we're not using those in a minute.
Another really nice thing about UK manufacture, of course, is that we do have full visibility of this kind of thing, especially in the blackouts. As you mentioned, blackouts are a technical product, and they do, of course, require some plastics and chemicals. But what we put in here is considerably more controlled than in, say, Southeast Asia or Asia.
Definitely, yeah.
So I think we always adhere to REACH chemicals norms. We sign up to things like Prop 65 for the States.
We do, yeah.
Loads of different things that we're having to adhere to on an ongoing basis.
Yes. We ensure that our supply chain is REACH compliant, so that we are.
Yeah.
And then that helps us with our Ecotex certification then.
Super. So here's a vast topic.
Yeah.
Flame retardancy. It's a really big topic, this one. And certification of flame retardancy. I guess once upon a time, when Edmund Bell first started into contract, the focus would have been the UK. The product range would have been very narrow. I think we probably started with something like Venus dim out, so very simple. So probably would have been testing British standard for drapery, BS 5867 part 2B, and that was it. But not so today. So how does FR testing work? Is it something we do in-house, Ashley, or how does it work?
No, we do this externally, and it's always by a UCAS accredited lab if it's in the UK, and an accredited laboratory if it's in Europe or the States or anywhere else internationally. It's an absolute minefield, is FR, and we could be here till gone midnight tonight, but we'll keep it brief and we'll keep it informative so that we hope that you get all the information you need. FR standards do change depending on country, depending on origin, depending on end use, things like that. So we've really got to be making sure that we are testing our products to the right standards to make sure that they can be used in certain countries. So
that's something that starts right at the beginning of our development process for a product, isn't it? We have those discussions. How is it likely to be used? So is it a chair? Is it a bedspread? Is it drapery? Which countries is it going to be used in? Is it going to be used in certain types of settings? So, for instance, a really, specific one is in France. Buildings over 11 stories would probably need M1 in hotel rooms. but only EN class 1 or European class 1 for any smaller hotel rooms. So really, yeah, it's a minefield, as we say, and I think that what we want to get across is we've thought about all of that.
Yeah.
And we've just presented it as a nice list across the back of your product spec that just says, here's everything it fulfills. And if you do have questions about these things, then, you know, we have the people to ask. So yeah, so can we maybe run off, let's say, I guess some of the other factors that would affect or require different flame retardancy?
Yeah, so if we look at draperies, like you've mentioned there, it's end use and where it's going to be used.
Yeah.
For upholstery, it also depends on where it's being used, whether it's a domestic setting or whether it's somewhere like a hotel or...
Because here in the UK, you actually need flame retardancy for domestic chairs.
You do, yeah. So if we touch on upholstery first, we need a cigarette and match test domestically in the UK. If you're going to have any seating in your homes, then we need to meet the cigarette and match test. If we want to use upholstery in settings such as hotels, schools, restaurants, any settings that are more commercial and they're going to have a lot more footfall in there, we certify those to CRIB 5, and then there are more extensive tests for prisons and things like hospitals, maybe.
Prison riot proof.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, for upholstery we do need different ones, and then that changes depending where in the world
exactly
the upholstery is going.
Yeah, so we've talked in previous sessions about the fact that we have 9 new upholstery qualities, so 13 ranges in total, adding another 3 this year. It's going to be a really, you know, expansive range. And for many of those articles, there are multiple versions available. We always make sure we have CRIB 5 because that's the native requirement here. And CRIB 5 is relatively, it's hard to compare standards, isn't it? But it's relatively high up. It's harder to attain often.
It is, yes. Yeah.
So if it hits CRIB 5, we've often also tested it for American NFPA 260, IMO 8 for marine. We often also tested it for basically the European cigarette and match, which is EN 1021 1+2. Yeah. I love you mouthing the numbers. So yes, and then we've also often given you a second version of the new articles that is basically price aggressive, and it's aimed at those other markets. So it maybe doesn't hit CRIB 5, but it hits everything else you need. I think before we go any further, one really important thing about flame retardancy is, unlike many of the other technical requirements that we're talking about, this is government mandated.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's not nice to have.
No, you need it for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But you know, with flame retardancy in general, it's to control the spread of the flame, so that if there is a fire in any building, it gives you enough chance to get out there. Flame retardant, this is sort of some of the questions I do get sometimes. Flame retardant fabrics will burn if you put a light on it.
Yeah, we've seen this
quite a few times.
Yeah.
But it's to control the spread of flame, to ensure that the product burns in a controlled manner so that you can leave the building safely. So,
you know, I think, you know, obviously all these different standards we've mentioned, they'll differ in terms of, you know, they might be looking for, as you say, spread of flame, amount of melt, whether there's any burning debris. There's a lot of different things.
There's a lot of different things depending on different tests, but for cigarette and match and CRIB 5, they'll make sure that when they mock up a seat, and if this foam has burnt through, then they'll look for that as well.
I think we can come back to that in a little bit more detail, aren't we? Should we talk? I think we're going to talk a little bit about drapery testing and exactly what's the roster that we normally, you know, say a dim out or a new blackout. What do we test to?
Yeah, so we'll always look at the testing to do. So we'll look at M1, which is for France.
Yeah.
We'll look at EN 13773, which is for Europe in general.
Actually, many places in Europe will accept EN standard.
Yeah. We'll look at B1 for Germany.
Yeah.
We'll look at Class Uno for Italy. And then internationally, if we're looking at the States, we look at CA19 and NFPA 701 as well. And then, of course, we've got all our British standards that we look for.
And IMO for ships as well, actually.
Yeah, IMO is actually the only international standard.
Yeah, true.
The rest are country-specific most of the time.
I mean, you'll find that there are additional ones outside this. I think we've recently been talking about Australian standard,
Russian
FR as well. So lots of different standards that we could test to. Yeah. A lot of places fall into accepting American NFPA or British standard or European class as well, which is lucky because if there were as many standards as there are countries, we'd be in trouble. It's a very expensive endeavour as well to test to these standards. You know, what is it? What's the cost of is it a B1? One of the most expensive?
Yeah, B1 is, you're looking at sort of €1,300, €1,400 for that test. There's a wide expanse of testing, and the range of pricing for those testing is just as vast as well.
The other thing to mention, I think, is, and this is important when you're looking at, you know, fabrics from other suppliers. EN, for example, let's take EN 13773. That is the European standard for drapery, right? Yeah. There's different classes as well. Right?
There is. Yeah.
So you can get a 3, you can get a 2, you can get a 1 being the best.
Yeah.
So this is something that kind of is worth paying attention to when you're comparing fabrics and suppliers too.
Yeah, and for these we always look at getting class 1.
Yeah.
Regardless of where it's going or anything, we test for it. EN 13773 to class 1. Yeah. We test class Uno to class Uno. We really keep our high standards.
There's often also some additional aspects, like comes to mind for me, British standard for drapery. Yeah. So 5867. Normally we'll test part 2B.
Yes.
And then there's part 2C, and it's a flame retardancy test, but it has the addition of washing, doesn't it?
Yes, there's a lot more washing involved to make sure that that FR that is on that fabric stays there.
It's super durable.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so we use that mainly for our inherent FR fabrics.
Yeah.
Because there is no treatment on there. The FR is inherent, it's in the yarn, and no matter how many times you wash that, the FR is still going to be.
What kind of setting would someone want that in? Maybe healthcare?
Healthcare, yeah, care homes, things like that, where you are going to be washing your fabrics a lot more than if they were in a standard hotel or house or somewhere like that.
So as we said, it's important actually to bear this inherent flame retardant thing in mind, or at least the passing of something like a part 2C test, because if you have used a treated fabric, and you put it into a high traffic situation like this, where it's being washed frequently, often they have to be, you know. And actually we talked yesterday, Stephen and I, about the requirement for housekeeping. You know, that's something to really bear in mind when you're specifying. How often are you going to be washing this stuff? Because if it is a treated cotton or a treated linen, a treated silk, whatever, it's going to wash off. It's going to be flame retardant, and, you know, heaven forbid there's a fire, but it won't be flame retardant anymore.
No.
So
yeah, that's the thing we need to keep an eye on.
That's it.
But we do have a lot of inherent FR goods as well.
We do, yeah. So, and then upholstery, I guess.
Yes.
Because this is the new big topic for us.
It is.
What's the roster that we test for as standard?
Yeah, so we're quite new into that. So in terms of FR, we, as discussed, we test for cigarette and match. We test for crib 5. We test for NFPA 260, and we test for IMO as well. Yeah. Which is part 8. And
I mean, you obviously said cigarette and match. We sometimes use that interchangeably with the European standard, don't we?
We do, yeah, which is the EN 1021.
Yeah.
The tests are very similar, along with the NFPA 260. Yeah. They are a cigarette and match test. Yeah. Where they mock up a seat, they light a cigarette, and they leave it there.
Right.
And they see what effect that has on the fabric, if it chars, if it burns. Yeah. They'll then test that, and then the cigarette and match, match test is a little bit more vigorous. Yeah. It is to replicate a match. A lit match on a seat and see what happens.
Some mischievous kid trying to burn the chair.
So that's more for the domestic setting.
Yeah.
In terms of crib 5,
yeah,
they look at a more stringent test. There's a lot more fuel to burn on there, where it's a little wooden crib that's sat on there.
What's meant by crib?
A crib is just a wooden square structure that is just placed on there. Yeah. There's a lot more fuel there to burn, and they'll assess that. So it will burn, so you need a lot more FR on your products to pass that test.
Got it, yeah. So it's just, okay. So also as if you were, you know, leaving an item on a chair, and, you know, there was fuel on it, and to make sure it's not going to be a real source of flame for the rest of the room.
Yeah.
So I think another key thing to talk about in upholstery, and something that we actually only started testing for relatively recently, is Weizenbeek or double rub version, and how that compares to Martindale. Why do we have both on there?
Yeah, so they are quite different, but they are both abrasion tests. So the Martindale abrasion test is a circular motion where
I think you should look these things up on YouTube, guys. It's very interesting.
Yeah, there are a lot of videos out there. But yeah, the Martindale test is your fabric sample will be placed in a holder. I mean, these tests are very old, and they're rubbed against the semi-worsted abradant because that was deemed as
the suiting that people be wearing.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but essentially this is simulated bums on chairs.
That's That is what it is. Yeah.
Lots of bums on chairs.
Yeah. So it's a semi-worsted absorbent, which is deemed what people wore at the time. Obviously now we have jeans, we have all sorts of apparel that we wear.
Yeah.
And the circular motion, called a lysidue motion, is it abrades your fabric.
Yeah.
And you check it, and then once you've had 2 threads broken,
yeah,
you then stop the test, and that gives you your.
So it's actually a really stringent test, isn't it?
It is, yeah. A lot of all our fabrics are contract rated, so above 40,000 rubs, and we have some products that are up to 100,000 rubs as well.
So this is a really interesting one. Is there's such a variety of opinion about what is the level we accept of Weizenbeek double rub or Martindale abrasion.
Yeah.
And I think it's mythological almost, isn't it?
It is. There can be overkill in these tests as well. Obviously, for contract rating, you need 40,000. We have 100,000 for a lot of our
contract
products.
rating. A lot of the time, there we're talking about something that would be suitable to be in a busy lobby, isn't it?
Yeah. A lot of people getting up, getting down, and abrading that fabric with their jeans, with their trousers, with their whatever they're wearing. So yeah, we do a lot of those.
I think so. That then means, of course, that from a contractor's point of view, there'll be a completely different requirement in practicality between, say, the actual seat of a chair, the back of the chair, the arms of the chair, all getting different treatment, aren't they? In real use.
They are.
And certainly, if a chair is in a lobby or a food and beverage space, in a guest room where really it's just a wardrobe, isn't it? It gets clothes thrown on it.
Yeah. So a lot of time you'll see abradant here.
Yeah.
Where people's cuffs and arms are.
Yeah.
And also obviously on the actual seat as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Weizenbeek test, that's rather than a circular motion or lysidue motion that we said about the Martindale, it's straight. It's up and down. Double rubs is what they call it. So it's up and down, up and down, back and forth. Yeah.
Got it.
So it's still testing people sitting down, getting up, but the Martindale does test in other directions as well.
What's quite strange is that, so obviously, just to explain, Martindale tends to be more European standard, I think used in Asia quite a bit as well. Double rub and Weizenbeek is really States and North America, I would say.
Yeah.
What's strange is often you don't get very correlated results out of these two things, even though they're really similar.
No, you don't. What you'll find is if you get a good pass on a Martindale, you'll get a good pass on a Weizenbeek.
Yeah.
But because the motions are different, you might get slightly different results.
Yeah.
Because the Martindale is testing in different directions and the Weizenbeek is just back and forth.
So I guess it depends then which way the sample has been placed, whether warp weft is
it can do,
more effective.
It can do. Sometimes in the holder, the sample will rotate slightly as it's being tested as well.
Good point, yeah. So there's a lot of things to bear in mind. What's then a good rating in double rub?
Double rub, we aim to get similar to what we get for Martindale.
Right. So
we're looking at 100,000 for a lot of our fabrics, or certainly above 40 or 50,000.
100,000 is, guys, really, really good.
Yeah.
There are, some suppliers of things like vinyls and faux leathers where there are no yarns to break.
Yeah, they can go on and on.
They'll test to like 250,000.
But they do check for the shade change as well to make sure that
so that's important too.
As well. Yeah. So even if it is getting abraded, your dye's not running out. So your fabric is abraded a little bit, but it's still the same colour and matches the rest of the sea.
Yeah.
Not you've got a great big white patch somewhere where someone's just sat and it's abraded.
Yeah.
So they do check for the shade change as well.
Okay. So that's a really important way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So shall we move on to acoustic absorbency, because this is something that is just close to the hearts of everyone at the moment. I think probably because they're in spaces like this where it's really echoey. This is the worst place to speak about acoustic absorbency. It's so echoey here.
Yeah.
And I think the reason behind it is we've got an awful lot of open plan areas nowadays.
We have, and designers and architects are certainly using a lot more hard surfaces in their design.
Yeah.
They look quite sleek and stylish and very modern and in trend at the moment, so they're using a lot of hard surfaces. And if we use this showroom as an example, we've got a hard floor, we've got hard walls, we do have fabrics lying around, but in hard areas where there's a lot of hard surfaces, you do need those because noise travels and noise can be quite disruptive. Yeah. And it can really, certainly in office spaces, it can disrupt people, and the work that can be done is reduced because of the sound and the noise of people's phones going off and people moving chairs, tapping keyboards, those kind of things.
Especially when everyone's used to be working from home at the moment, you think that an office space will be, it's quite overwhelming. You want some sound dampening.
Exactly, yeah. So soft furnishings like ours reduce the noise levels that are in there and absorb some of that sound, so that it's a lot quieter in there.
And then, you know, as I've mentioned in previous sessions, I think the key is, if you have few fabrics, the ones that you do choose, you don't want some ephemeral, you know, light thing that's going to have no effect on acoustics. You want something that gives you bang for your buck for the weight of the goods, or for the amount of goods that you have there. So we tested, first and foremost, we tested dim outs, really, didn't we?
Yeah, we've done our dim outs early on. So yeah, sound will travel. Sound is an audible vibration that goes around and you can hear it. And there's two different types of sound. There's airborne sound, which is like from us, if our phone rang, if we get up off this chair, if we move a piece of furniture, if we walk around on this floor, if we talk like we are now. But there's also structural as well, which could be people standing on the floor above
And
or
actually
below,
go through the material.
and you can actually hear it through the roof. So there's two different types, and we test our fabrics at 18 different frequencies in hertz, and we test those, and at the end we have a grade between 0 and 1. 1 is that all the sound in that room has been absorbed. I think you mentioned yesterday that we test these at Salford University, and they mock up a room. They've got sensors everywhere recording the sound. 1 is all the sound is absorbed, 0 is no sound absorbed. So anywhere in between that scale, you can judge how much sound has been absorbed.
Right, so room. I had no idea about that before. I'm glad you explained this. Right.
So sorry, you mentioned dim outs. We've done dim outs.
Well, no, because I mean, this one has, I know, got a very, very good result, right? This is expression. This is an A rating. So apart from the coefficient figure that is given, see, I've got all the lingo that Ashley mentioned. There's also given a number rating for the Dumbos like myself who don't know what that means. So this has got an A rating, so the best rating. So that effectively means that this has soaked up a load of sound, considering the amount of curtain you've got.
They're graded from A to E, and then there's also classified as well,
right, okay.
If they can.
So just in terms of the testing method, how does that work? You mentioned they mock up a room.
It's a very empty room. They have sensors everywhere recording the sound, and they mock up a curtain being hung, or any end use that you want to do. So
it's every time we do the test, I guess it's based on the same square meterage of space.
So it's the same size curtain that we send them. It's the same distance from the wall. So it's a standard test that we do on all our products. So
one thing to bear in mind from your end, I'm going to explain a little bit about why we probably think that different fabrics have better results than others. But one thing that's bound to also affect acoustics is how you make your curtains, how you make your chairs, isn't it? I mean, the fullness of the curtain, I think, is also dictated in these tests. So that is how often it is pleated, if you like, in front of the window, how many dips and bulges that curtain has will affect how much sound it's absorbing and how many sound waves are caught in its area.
Absolutely, because if you lay your curtain flat, there's a lot less surface area than if you have your curtain.
So this is where roller blinds, we admit that roller blinds are a growing trend and that we're going to be looking into that in future as well, but that's where a roller blind kind of falls down, because it's a flat surface. It's only going to reflect sound, right?
Absolutely.
Whereas a very double full curtain is bound to capture more sound. So the choices you make in construction of your curtains and your chairs and the other soft furnishings are almost as important as what they're made out of. The reason why a dim out might be good, I'm going to postulate and you tell me.
Okay.
It's a 3-layer fabric, right? So you've got back, you've got front, you've got middle, often at different angles to one another. Could that be it, Ashley?
Possibly. It is quite a soft material.
Yes.
Obviously, things like blackouts have a coating on there, which is quite a hard surface. That is a fully soft surface and a soft fabric, so it absorbs a lot more of the sound.
So that probably plays into, so we have got one blackout that we've tested for acoustics. We kind of deemed the others probably too hard a surface to be very useful for that purpose. But Sensation Velvet Blackout, which is the newest one, as a velvet, has a raised surface, is very soft. And this has been rated. It doesn't get the same kind of amazing ratings as, say, Expression Dim Out, but it's good to know this does have an acoustic effect.
It does, it certainly absorbs some of the sound.
So what we have so far, we have Expression, which is a beautiful herringbone dim out with cationic construction, very natural looking, considering it's in polyester. Not only does it have Ecotex, but it's also sound absorbent to an A grade, which is excellent. But then all of our other double width dim outs have acoustic absorbency ratings too. So from Enigma, the linen look dim out, to our classic Venus dim out, we have certification available for all of these. And in fact, you can find those certificates yourself if you request access to our multimedia platform website, fabric-hub.com.
Yes.
You can go find all of those and the flame retardant certificates.
Yeah, everything's on there. Yeah.
So, very topical at a time like this.
It is.
Antimicrobial.
Yes.
So we've seen splashed all over the media, antimicrobial this, antimicrobial that. We also see, or definitely are seeing, an awful lot more advertising, and even we're getting questioning even from big hotel groups, let's say, about the use of antiseptics, antimicrobial treatments and cleaning agents. Really big hotel group recently has just been asking us, can we spray your curtains with this particular kind of thing? What we would like to do is really present a product that it doesn't require that kind of treatment because it already has it.
Fabric, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you could explain the term antimicrobial, because all sorts of terms get bandied around.
There are, yeah. So obviously it's a sign of the times that we're all in at the minute.
Yeah.
We do get asked a lot about this. Antimicrobial, antibacterial, antifungal. There's all sorts of different terminology that gets asked from us for our products. And the antimicrobial treatment that we have stops the growth of any bacteria, any fungus, any virus within the fabric. So it doesn't, it stops the growth of any of that in our fabrics.
So really important there is antibacterial is not going to do you any good with COVID.
No,
right?
It has to be antiviral as well.
Yeah. So actually, I mean, our antimicrobial treatment is a treatment that's included within the broader finish called EnduraCare Plus that you might have heard us talking about in previous sessions. At the moment, that refers particularly to some of our upholstery options. The rest of that kind of finish is, waterproof and flame retardant and stain resist. So it's a really high grade technical finish. But yes, the antimicrobial part of it has been tested, as you said, against a long roster of different things, right?
Yeah, different
Even
things.
algae.
Yeah, algae, E. coli,
yeah.
Things like that. It has been tested to that to ensure that it doesn't promote the growth of that within fabric if it was subject to that.
Got it. So yes, so that's available on a whole rake of different upholstery fabrics, from piece dyed to actually printable goods as well.
Yeah.
So I think we don't want to tell you too much about all of that, because in fact, coming up this afternoon, we have a whole session from Stephen, our UK contract manager, all about technical upholstery. He's going to take you through that whole range and explain the different finishes available, the colour ranges available where you can see and get sampling, all of that kind of stuff. So we don't want to steal his thunder.
No.
Amy, what time's that at?
3:30.
3:30 GMT. So we encourage you to come back and hear more about that. Do we have any questions that we need to answer, guys?
There's none on here, no.
Okay, right. So in that case, thank you very much. And we hope you come back for a later session, and have a good afternoon.